Okay, are we back? It looks like maybe we're back. Okay, I think we're online. All right. Hopefully we're good now. Just saw this video. We'll watch this, talk about some gun control until we can get the Candace Owens tea, until we get the truth about Charlie Kirk. I haven't seen this. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this guy's take is going to be, but it should be interesting. Let's get into it.
The justice system is obviously, that's a really interesting thing to talk about. And constitutional law is a fascinating thing for people studying. This idea that we argue about the Second Amendment, like, let's let constitutional lawyers, I think, discuss a lot of those things, and we should all understand that and be curious about it. But our Constitution is also silly. Like, let's remake everything. Like, let's have that conversation. There's so much better that we can do.
Just so, because a lot of times we throw around terms and amendments and we say the Second Amendment and we don't know what it means. Okay, so let's just read it for everyone to have an idea. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay? So we're not talking about bears having arms. We're not talking about I should own a gun because I should be free to do anything. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the necessity of a militia for keeping the government, keeping the state in check, that they don't infringe upon our other rights. And the First Amendment, this is what fundamentally secures all of our rights, the freedom of speech. This is like the ideological thing, the foundation of our ability to express our ideas freely, which is what rights sort of are to begin with, is just an idea. And then this is the physical manifestation of that, the physical security of our right to defend ourselves and to not be tyrannized by our government. Okay, so we have that context.
Have a serious conversation about what kind of guns and bullets people can have. Not that they can have them or that they can't have. Like, that's the conversation. That's where we should be right now. Everything gets regulated. Everything. There are trade-offs in healthcare. There are trade-offs in everything. But Americans now are so divided. They want everything that they want. That compromise is something that we don't do as Americans, much less in government. That's preposterous. The Democrats that demand purity or anybody that is doing that, you don't agree with me, you're wrong. Hold on. That's not, no, you don't have any relationships with people in your real life like that. Like my wife and I don't agree on a lot of stuff, but I love her. I adore her.
Well, it's what we talked about before. They're on teams, and you want your team to win, so you state
Why do you want your team to win?
It's a natural thing with human beings.
All right. I agree with that.
What I'm saying about the gun thing, the most fucked up part about the messiness of the gun thing is that even if you made guns illegal, even if you said you can't have any bullets, you'll all go to jail. There's so many guns. You're not getting them all. It's not possible. There's more guns than there are people, which means there's more than 30 million guns.
I mean, that's true. That's a good point. It's not the most important point for why we should protect the Second Amendment and our right to bear arms. But it is true. I mean, it's just not going to work, or some kind of recall or limiting, taking everyone's guns. There's just too many. That's kind of more like a practical reason we can't do it, but there's deeper, better reasons hopefully they get into.
In this country alone?
It's absolutely the most important point in the discussion.
That's a nutty number, man. You really stop and think about that number? You're like, what? Is that real?
But you don't really stop the behavior by necessarily creating certain laws about why someone might behave a certain way and shoot people. That's not going to necessarily change. What you do is you do limit the access to certain types of weapons and rounds of ammunition, right?
Yeah, well, the real question is why would someone do that, right? That's the number one question. Like limiting.
It's a harder question. But it's a harder question to answer. The easier question to answer is make them less accessible.
Yes, if you
to people who have problems that we can't figure out or solve.
If you could make them less accessible.
But the president will blame, like, I don't mean to get political, but like there's no data on the video game argument. That there's no data on that.
Well, the video game argument is interesting because I've had soldiers bring it up to me, including Dakota Meyer.
Yeah, I was just looking at Charlie back there. She's really passed out. Wait, I wonder if you can see my other one too. They had a long day. Wait, how do I do this? No, you can't. They had a long day. Lots of vacuuming for these two. They're passed out. Oh, I love it. Yeah, so I don't know where this guy's going exactly with this. It seems like he's just saying we need to limit the... So far, he's saying we need to limit the types of people who are allowed to buy guns legally and stuff like that. Fine. Sure, I agree that there should probably be some checks, like if you're, some kind of deranged psychopath and you've been institutionalized, then yeah, we can limit that guy's ability to get guns. But for the most part, people need to have access to guns and the most powerful guns that they can possibly have for the militia to mean anything. Remember, this amendment is about the ability of the people to resist a tyrannical government. Well, if you say that people can only have like rocks and bows and arrows and things, well, that's going to do nothing. If you say they can only have pistols, well, then you're doing a little better. Maybe you can defend your house from invaders, from a burglar or something. But you're not going to be able to form a militia when you're that outgunned by the government. That's why I don't believe in this. We shouldn't have any large clips or semi-automatic rifles or anything like that. I think we should. Because the point of the amendment is about a militia. It's not about the guns themselves,
Yeah, I heard that conversation.
I'm willing to have it. I mean, I don't think it necessarily makes sense that people would act out in a certain way that's horrific because of a video game. But if they were already inclined to violence to begin with, maybe they already had a fucking short circuit, and then they get desensitized to violence in movies and violence in video games. Does that have an impact on them? I'm not the guy to answer that question.
Whether or not it has an impact on them
is a variable. It's a variable that I think merits discussion. I don't know if it's true or not.
Here's why I don't think it is. Because...
You don't think it merits discussion?
Well, let me make this point, and then you decide if you think it merits discussion.
Okay.
The violent video games are played at far higher rates in Japan, and they don't have the gun violence we have.
It's a good point. They have a very different culture, though. The way
they don't have access to guns.
That's true.
That's it.
But they don't also have...
But they also have no way to resist a tyrannical government. How do you interpret the Second Amendment? I know how the Supreme Court interprets it, and I agree with freedom of owning firearms, but the reading of it seems like you need to be in a militia. No, I don't think everyone needs to be in a militia. Certainly not. If all in a perfect world, I don't think we'd ever need to have a militia. I'm saying there needs to be the possibility of a militia forming. So a tyrannical government, if they wanted to make it impossible for us, for the people, to resist whatever laws and regulations and things that they want to impose, they would love to get rid of our ability to resist them. And guns and large magazines are really the only possibility. So it's not even about we must have an active standing militia, or we must form one, or everyone must join one. It just has to be a card that we can play as the populace of this country. It has to be something that the government has to consider, that they can't push too far, otherwise there might actually be a repercussion on the part of the populace. Does that make sense? I'm not saying everyone should be in a militia. I probably would resist joining the militia unless it were absolutely necessary to protect my family or my community or something like that. So again, it's the possibility of a militia keeping the government in check. It's like another form of checks and balances. It's a really sort of tangible form of checks and balances. So that's what I mean. It just needs to be on the table so that the government can't push too far. They can't violate our rights without any possibility of repercussion, which is the case in countries like Australia, Japan, etc., right? I don't want there to be civil war. I don't want there to be civil unrest. I don't want the people to have to fight the government. But am I going to sit here and say the government will always protect us and never try to violate our rights? No, of course not. And of course they will try to violate our rights, as they are and always do. And the founding fathers knew that better than anyone. That's why they started this country via a militia. You see what I mean? So
They've had a few mass
Joe,
stabbings.
it's the access. Dude, I've shot guns. I shoot guns. I get I have nothing but respect for hunters. I grew up in a hunting community, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think that there's much past the conversation about accessibility to guns that can fire that many rounds that quickly, killing that many people. I don't think we have to get rid of those somehow. But I agree. How do you do it?
Yeah,
this is another misunderstanding that people always have. They say, like, oh, the only argument for having guns is so that people can hunt. That's why you don't need an AK-47 or whatever it is. You know, any sort of semi-automatic, high-capacity round or high-capacity magazine gun. That's not what the Second Amendment is even about. Nowhere in the Second Amendment does it mention hunting. The right of the people to hunt. Right? It's the right of the people to keep and bear arms for the necessity of the security of a free state. Freedom from what? Well, not freedom from deer. Not freedom from squirrels and deer, right? Okay.
That's the question.
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people. So what do you do? So by the way, I think you buy as many as you can back for sure. You spend a whole bunch of taxpayer money. Just help. By the way, there's a ton of people in a bind right now that have a rifle, but like, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to afford my insulin. Let me get rid of this AK-47 to live another month. You buy some guns back. It's a good expenditure of money. And then
what? That's the worst argument I ever heard. Yeah, you know how the Oh, hi, Char. Yeah. You know how the insurance companies are completely corrupt and it costs, $10,000 to have insulin every month? Why don't we just spend more money in a more corrupt way to take people's guns so that they can buy one more month worth of insulin? Yes, very wise. Yes, very intelligent plan for the gun control debate. Well, everything's fucked anyway, so let's just make it more fucked. Okay.
melt them down and turn them into furniture for people.
So if you wanted to do that without changing the Second Amendment, like you just have a buyback where you just offer people the opportunity to make some money by giving their guns up.
Well, the Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong.
By the way, people can just do that if they want. If you are running low on money, you can just sell your gun. And yeah, Mighty Star, like, where's that money coming from? My taxes, I bet. Absolutely. That's exactly where it comes from, and that's what he said. At the taxpayer's expense, we'll buy back people's guns. Well, why wouldn't people who need money just sell their guns without being coerced to? And without the buyer, without forcing the American people to be the buyer of the guns? That doesn't make any sense. Well, people need insulin this month, so let's force them to sell their guns to the government. So we'll give them money so that they can... Yeah, what? And you're exactly right, Sarlacc. So technically we're paying twice for the guns. Buying them, and then buying them back with our own taxes. Right, so even the money you'd get, you would be taxed on. And so you'd be paying to sell your gun against your will. Makes no sense.
On the Supreme Court, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't say that people should have... Until 2008, it didn't say that. Nobody thought that people should have a personal right to guns, till the Heller case. But... So I don't think you even need to talk about the Second Amendment. I think people just need to agree that these guns shouldn't be sold.
Well,
the
you
ammunition.
need to talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because people can have guns. You can have guns. The brick has a right to have guns. You just can't have these guns anymore. No more of those ones. You can have all these guns.
Regional restrictions anyway, right? Like
and they
in New
work.
York City, you can't have a handgun.
Yeah, they work.
Right?
You can't even. I don't think you can have you can have a switchblade in New York City. Yeah, Cyrus.
Oh yeah, and that's great. And it's not like there's any crime in New York City. It's not like there are any stabbings or any shootings anywhere in New York City. This is the other classic thing, which is a classic pro-gun position is, well, if you make it illegal to own guns, then the only people who own guns will be criminals, right? And criminals already buy guns illegally because when you buy one legally, there's all sorts of ways to track it, all sorts of ways to figure out, your identity based on, bullet casings or the type of gun or, serial numbers and VIN numbers on the different parts and the guns. So people who are committing crimes with guns already buy them illegally. Few people buy them legally and then commit the crimes. So it's just, completely fallacious argument that if you make them illegal, gun violence will stop.
Vance, the DA there, is like terrified that they're changing, the federal government is changing the law because he knows that those gun laws in New York work really well. And by the way, people always make the argument, well, they have those gun laws in Chicago and there's a ton of violence. That's because Chicago's on the border of Indiana. It doesn't have them. Guns go across the border just fine. That's
so guns go across the border just fine, kind of like how America's on the border of Mexico. So then why make them illegal again? If illegal gun selling and buying happens anyway in places like Chicago where they have strict gun laws. So they want to allow us to have muzzle loaders and single-shot revolvers. Where does the Second Amendment say that? It doesn't say the right to bear muzzle loaders, 100%. In fact, there's probably an interpretation of the Second Amendment that not only do we have the right to keep and bear arms, we have the right to keep and bear the most powerful arms we can possibly have. Because otherwise a militia is useless. Like imagine if, the British came over here and they set up their colonies and the colonies got all pissed off because of a tea import tax and all sorts of stuff. And the British government's law was, you have the right to bear arms, but really only bows and arrows. You can only have bows and arrows. And we'll have all the muskets and the cannons and stuff like that. Well, then the American Revolution would not have been very successful, would it have? It would not. And I understand the British Army was more advanced than the American Army, right? The proto-American Army in the Revolutionary War. But we were able to use guerrilla tactics and the rest, and the best technology we had access to in order to win. And that could potentially happen with a U.S. militia, So, yeah, it's dumb to say that you need to limit the type of guns. Yeah, colonists can only have rocks and sticks and slings, right? Sure, buddy. That's a great way to ensure tyrannical rule of a government over a people. To give them, just give them little crumbs that they can't possibly win with, as opposed to the things they might possibly be able to win with.
Gun laws work. They work.
Well, Chicago is also in the middle of a bitter drug war.
Well, yeah, I mean that's where the violence is coming from. But
Yeah.
people should have less accessibility to those types of guns, like every other civil society in the world. Come on, this is like.
But it goes back to what you were talking about
Go ahead.
before, like that drugs, if they were legal, you wouldn't have that sort of a drug war.
Right,
yet.
for sure, it's the root of most of the violence in the inner cities, and obviously in Mexico.
Yeah.
It's black markets, it's the illicit drug. Yeah, they're making tons of money on that.
What is the Second Amendment exactly as it's written? Can you?
The right to bear arms shall not be
Joe.
infringed.
No, that's not what it says. I mean, they'll pull it up, but a well-regulated militia shall not be infringed, being necessary to the security of a free state. And of course, a well-regulated militia must include the right of the people to keep and bear arms. That's what it says.
So how do you think that the Supreme Court misinterpreted that?
That in the 2008 Heller case, everybody should just I would plug the work of Eric Siegel, who's
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms.
Comma. Come on, dude. Case in point. Comma. Great point, buddy. Comma, dude. You're missing the comma.
Not be infringed.
Yeah, those commas get argued by constitutional scholars
for days.
Yeah, but the
days on
Supreme
time.
Court didn't decide until 2008 that Americans had a right to have their own weapon.
That's such a crazy statement. Like when you read it, it's so interesting because we're going back in time, trying to figure out how people in 1776 thought about guns and whether or not that applies to us. Because if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think, 1789, if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think, well, then who gets to decide? Like
Mhm.
one of the reasons
We get
why
to decide as a society on any of
one
these
of the
things.
reasons why it's so
Is
interesting.
what I want to believe.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting.
This guy's
to
just
read
steamrolling. Did you see that little like eye roll by Joe when he interrupts?
Because if it doesn't apply to us, we have to think. Oh, it's 1789. If it doesn't apply to us, we have to think. Well, then who gets to decide? Like one of the reasons
We get
why
to decide as a society on any of these.
He's so pissed. Okay, Mighty Starlight. Drugs being legal is a slippery slope because you can see what the wrong drugs can do, like Oxy and Appalachia can lead to higher crime rates due to addiction, so some drugs shouldn't be legal. I completely agree with that. You know, when I was a nihilist libertarian or whatever, I would have said, all drugs should be legal. You should be able to do whatever you want. But the truth is we live in a society, and we want our society to be shaped around our, objective, true, ethical system, right? And so part of the ethical system, I think it should be a Christian ethical system, obviously. And part of that is not promoting the use of drugs. But the difference, the symmetry breaker between drugs and guns, as if there are probably a million symmetry breakers, but one of the major ones is there's no constitutional amendment that says every person shall have the right to bear fentanyl. Every person shall have the right to light up a crack pipe in the doorway of the 7-Eleven that I have to shuffle past the guy to buy my Snickers bar. Could you imagine fentanyl as a legal drug? Well, I can, unfortunately, because they're legalizing all sorts of drugs all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years heroin is legal in Washington or Oregon or these places that are super, pro drugs. So yeah. I mean, I'm not for drugs being legal. I think they should be harder to get. Yeah, the symmetry breaker is there's no constitutional amendment about that at all.
one of the reasons why it's so interesting.
Is what I want to believe.
One of the reasons why it's so interesting to read these things is like we have, for whatever
Also,
reason.
you can't use drugs to defend yourself against a tyrannical government. In fact, actually, if you think about it, drugs being legal or promoted or widespread use of drugs would actually increase the ability of the government to be authoritarian, because everyone's zonked out on fentanyl and weed and heroin and everything else that they have no reason or energy or ability to actually resist the tyrannical control of the government. So, yeah, I think
when things get written into stone or carved into a stone or written onto a document, like the First Amendment, like the freedom of expression.
Sorry, things might be going wonky. Am I still streaming? Let me know, Mighty Sarlacc, if you can still see this.
We have it, so we all agree on it.
Freedom of
we don't
speech.
want to change it. Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, whatever. We
Same.
want to hold on to that. We want to keep.
Okay, should be back. Sorry, I tried to turn on TikTok because it looks like I got approved to actually stream on TikTok, which would be huge for starting my own debates and having more of those fun, like, vegan debates and stuff like that. And I think I just paused the stream by checking on that. So, my apologies, but we should be back.
Sure.
Like, this is our
All
law.
humans do.
And the Second Amendment, the right to have a gun. That's our law. We got it written down. Look, it's written there. So they'll study these ancient words, like scrolls. Like they go over these scrolls and look at the commas and look at the words.
Yeah.
Shall not be infringed upon. What did they mean? That's fascinating.
It is fascinating, but I think that they didn't mean this, Joe. I think that
How could they? They didn't know what this is.
They didn't, and the whole gun thing is a racket to make money. That's what that is. It's a way you sell fear. Like, home invasion is any family's worst fear, but it doesn't happen very much. Nor does kidnapping, nor do a lot of these crimes that.
Yeah, but guess why they don't happen very much? And guess where they happen less? Those things happen. They do happen. They happen less in states and cities where you can have a gun. Because why would a home invader risk dying himself if he's almost sure that the family he's invading has a gun? If he knows for a fact that nobody has any way to defend themselves, then it encourages home invasion. So that's just a dumb point. The gun thing is a money-making operation. It's fear-mongering, man. so that people are afraid and then they buy our guns. It's like, do you really think the founding fathers were like thinking about how yeah, we'll make this constitution and then we'll set up a gun empire and make money off the guns? No, of course not. Silly. Sounds like Afghanistan and China about how they export opium to other countries on purpose. Yeah, and China, also exports these like THC Delta 8 weed stuff to us. And it's almost like a new opium war. Remember, the opium wars was when Britain, and I think it was Britain, maybe America was involved, I'm not sure, would send opium over to China to pacify their populace so that they could take over more easily, take over in trade and in other ways. That's exactly what China's doing now. I mean, it's a good play. So if we make it legal, then it just makes it that much easier for our enemies to actually infiltrate us with fentanyl and other drugs.
Our generation of parents is helicopter parents, terrified of everything, not...
That's true. That's true.
Not letting their kids go outside.
You're right.
Come on, thinking that your kid's going to get kidnapped? You don't know anybody who had their kid kidnapped.
But you're generalizing, because home invasions do happen sometimes.
Right, but that's not how we should make laws.
But we don't have to exist like everybody's going to kidnap your kid or everyone's going to break into your home.
But I'm saying
the balance is that sometimes it's real. That's why people want to be able to have guns, because sometimes someone can break in your house, and people have defended their house and their property with guns.
Sure, but is it a realistic threat, or is it something that the gun industry creates these amazing ads and scares the shit out of people?
Oh, come on, man! Crime is real. Whether they
crime
make
is real,
ads or
it's
not,
certainly
crime
real.
is still real.
Yeah, what are these ads? I've never seen ads that are like, "Is someone will break into your home tonight? Buy our AK-47s." Like, are gun manufacturers even allowed to advertise? I've literally never seen one. I've never seen an ad for a gun, I don't think. You tell me if you've ever seen one. I think this guy's kind of just like stoner, hippie, boomer, He's got very strong opinions about things he knows nothing about, right? And it's not like I even know particularly much more about the Second Amendment or gun laws or anything like that. But a lot of this is just common sense. Like, if there's a possibility that any individual home you're going to invade has a gun, it will reduce the number of homes that will get invaded. Mighty Star, like, okay, definitely long delay from my comment until you get it. I don't know if that's still the case, but that's unfortunate. I don't know exactly what I can do about that. It might be the case that I can't really do anything. But anyway, we will work with it.
The clear point is the reason why we have so many guns in America is because there's so much money to be made off of them. I think we could absolutely limit them and regulate them and have a thoughtful conversation. I think that's where most people are at, although I hate that generalization.
There's something to that, but there's also something to the reason why we have so many cars. People like them.
I'll have that conversation.
People
we should
like
get rid of
them.
all the cars.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, now you're just being silly, right?
Don't get me wrong,
ridiculous. Why should we get rid of all the cars? Do you not like freedom, or do you have a better solution? Are you gonna
I don't have a better solution, but if there should be one, or I think that we.
Oh yeah, this is the gun argument in a nutshell. This is actually a great way to break down the gun argument. So he goes, the argument goes something like this: oh, okay, guns are dangerous, therefore we should get rid of them all. If that's a valid form of. Oh, thank you guys. Have a good one. See you next time. Bye bye. Sorry. So if you have guns, sorry, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the argument goes like this from the normie boomer libtards. Guns are dangerous, therefore get rid of all the guns. The same argument could be applied to cars. Cars are dangerous, actually probably more dangerous than guns. Actually, definitely more dangerous than guns in terms of fatalities. Oops, no, not that bad. One of my comments was YouTube filtered. Yeah, that's been happening. People keep telling me that. I don't know what to do about it, though. Anyway, so if cars are more dangerous than guns, then we should get rid of all the cars. Now, if you're being consistent, or you're trying to be consistent like this guy, you have to say that. You have to say, let's get rid of all the cars. Now, that's completely silly, obviously. Like, obviously, that's insane. We need cars, depending on where you live. The only place you could possibly live where you wouldn't need cars, and you still would need them, because everything would get so overloaded, would be like New York City. But that's what happens. These elitist people, they live in big cities, and they live in places where maybe you don't need a car. Maybe you never have to leave your house. So they say you can get rid of them all. Well, it's dumb. That's completely dumb.
Are killing ourselves with all the cars. The pollution is
Okay, but you can
make
get an
them
electric car.
Yeah, then that's fine. I think I would be fine.
What about all the car accidents?
I have a Chevy Volt since 2012.
Whoa, congratulations. You drive a Chevy Volt? Cool.
Solar panels. I'm trying to be the change I want to see in the world. If I'm coming off as I'm a complete hypocrite in all of it. I eat meat and I do all kinds of things. I think having a thoughtful conversation about guns and why they're a huge part of our culture and not another culture, the way that other cultures and countries regulate their weapons, the problems that they have, are problems, sure, we should talk about.
Yeah, they may go there with human drivers. They may go to autonomous driving only. That's not like something I'm totally against, autonomous driving being like widespread and mainstream. Like, I would probably choose to let my car drive me around. But the question is, do you have the right to drive? And I agree with you. I think people should still have the right to drive pretty much always, especially actually if you're thinking about tyranny of the government, if the government can have access to say it can commandeer the car companies and they could shut down every car in the country. Right now that couldn't happen because it's a gas car. If you have gas and you have your keys and an ignition, you can go wherever you want. You can escape. You can flee to Canada or Mexico or a different state if your state's getting crazy. If all the cars are autonomous, that might not be an option. So, yeah, we should be careful of that and think about that. And the government would love to do that. For the same reason they'd love to take away all the guns, they would love to ensure that nobody can do anything without being reliant on them. And I saw your comment earlier. A lot of words get filtered out when you're talking about the Second Amendment. Another great problem, censorship. This is why this is the First Amendment, the freedom of speech. Now we're in this kind of weird gray area where we are speaking through the means of a private company. So it's not something the government can really easily, or that the Constitution can really easily affect. But when you take away the freedom of speech anywhere, you take away our ability to have these conversations and to think about it and to change minds and influence people not to, remain sheep or, asleep, really, to what the government's intention is. Its intention is to tyrannize us. That is all it does. It's not there to help us. It's not there to, really ensure our safety in any serious objective way. It's there to increase its own power. Founding fathers battled that, and that battle is the only reason we're talking at all right now. But it's a battle we're sort of losing. It's a battle we seem to be losing, given all the censorship, given all the rest of it. Obviously, most other countries are worse off than we are, so we should be blessed and grateful that we do live in this country, but we got to protect it as well. And that's why we need the possibility to form a militia. That's why we need freedom of speech. That's why we need to speak against these dummies that don't really understand the nature of living in a society governed by an authoritarian structure, right?
Health. But the problem with that conversation that people don't want to have is everything costs money. That's why you have to pay taxes. Paying taxes is the price of civilization.
What does that have to do with mental health?
You have to pay for people to help people.
Right.
You can't advocate in government, Republican or Democrat, this is what, unfortunately, Trump and Republicans have advocated.
Peace, Sarlacc. Appreciate your contributions. Thanks for hanging out. Have a great night yourself, my friend. See you later.
Let's get mental health solutions to the violence. Let's do that. And everybody's behind that, except they cut the Obamacare programs that funded mental health. It's just you can't do. You have to spend the money providing mental health. It is a problem. It should be addressed, but it's not. The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
Well, the main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the
Without-
guns and the
the
bullets.
guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here. They're not going to just shoot themselves. The main problem is someone
people
who's
shoot
willing.
themselves.
The main problem
That's
is
the
someone
issue
who's
with
willing
gun
to
violence,
grab
suicide.
the gun and
Yep.
shoot people, right? We agreed. We both agree there's problems with having
No,
guns.
I
But don't you think the main problem is the person who actually shoots people?
I think that in every other country in the world, they don't have this problem because they don't have the guns. That's where I start and end on the argument.
Okay.
Why is that wrong?
That might be the case, that they don't have the guns. But there are places that do have guns and they don't have a lot of mass shootings. Canada's one of them, right?
They don't have the type of guns we have up there.
They have a lot of guns.
They do, but they don't have AK-47s with unlimited rounds. They don't have. That's crazy.
Well,
it's
do you
crazy.
think they have more
and by the
or
way,
less
I've shot those guns.
limitations?
They're awesome. I get it.
Okay. Do you think they have more or less limitations to what firearms they're allowed to have
I believe
in
the
Canada?
I believe the Canadian gun laws are far stronger,
I think
more regulated.
they just tried
They don't
passing
have-
something. Some really recently, Trudeau announced something that was going to severely limit. This is very recent. Severely limit the type of firearms you could have, including things that can have multiple rounds in chambers, and certain types of guns that are used right now as hunting rifles. Since there was a big pushback about that, this was really
There's
recently.
always
See if you
gonna-
can find that.
the conversation about like the freedom, like the Second Amendment, to me is. It's just your interpretation. Fine, whatever your interpretation is
Well,
fine.
that's what's interesting
But if
about
there's
it.
a
is
human
it is
impact, it's a healthcare issue, it's so extreme. It's really, if you want to know the answer to healthcare issues, you talk to public health experts. They have those answers. They have the research.
No,
But-
they
But
don't.
wait, hold on. What research? On what?
well, they don't
Mass
have enough research
murderers?
on. They don't have enough research on gun
But
violence,
what are you
unfortunately.
talking about?
Oh,
then?
so they don't
I'm
have
talking
the
about
research.
if you want to know the solutions for what is impacting and creating death by any measure, accidental death.
Right, but we're talking about gun violence, right?
right.
What healthcare professionals have the solutions to gun violence?
I think a lot of healthcare solutions. I think certainly surgeons have argued for why certain ammunition is destroying the inside of the body and unsurvivable. I think public health officials have argued certainly.
What does that have to do with a constitutional argument about whether we should have guns? Just because a surgeon can describe what happens when you get shot. I mean, this guy's obviously a clown. I don't think we really have to take this too seriously. Yeah, he didn't really present any coherent argument. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe we can get back to this. I wonder if Candace has presented the evidence yet. I've been waiting with bated breath. I should switch accounts.
Question.
Within her rights to suggest.
To sign up for my private book club that I kept on Tuesday, and then they took out a clip of that book club, from that book club, and accused me of accusing Erica of murdering her husband. I mean, they process everything that happened with Charlie and what it kind of means. He actually knows what I really meant, which is something that I didn't say. And yeah, here it is. Here's that clip.
But you watch this clip in its entirety, and it seems pretty blatant that she's saying, and people are interpreting it this way, which is also important, that the Trump administration, not whatever it was, we went from underground Jew tunnels, Mossad, the Trump administration killed Charlie Kirk.
Just really needed to just take a breather and really process everything that happened with Charlie and what it kind of means in terms of where we are. And I think it is a circumstance where we just know that he was truly betrayed in one of the most egregious ways that I think I've ever seen. It has made me lose faith in politics. It has made me fully lose faith in Trump. And my heart aches for the fact that he gave so much of his life to Trump and to politics. And they just were like, nope, that is it. He serves us or doesn't serve us, and we want to move on. And so here's a holiday. Bro, if they try to give me a holiday, what is with them giving people a holiday after they kill them? Why is that a thing? You know what I mean? like, oh, Martin Luther King, what about this holiday? What about this boulevard? Anyways, let me knock it off. Like, they're gonna give Charlie Kirk a boulevard. They already did. They did in Israel. They gave him freaking boulevard. It's like, as soon as they give you a boulevard and a holiday, they definitely killed you. Okay, there's no question. They killed you. There's no way. That's like their signature thing. It's like that's what they do. It's the Fed signature.
I don't think that's completely unfair if you look at it. I mean, how did Malcolm X die? Did he get killed? There's tons of Malcolm X boulevards, MLK, JFK, and you go, no, it's just because they died and we're honoring them. It's like, well, there's a pattern. You know?
They sign off after they murder you. You're like holiday and a boulevard.
And I don't think you can take this clip and seriously say, or say that she's like seriously, with all earnest, accusing the Trump administration of assassinating Charlie Kirk. She's kind of saying she's kind of making these vague claims. So to really like bring this up and say Candace definitely thinks that Donald Trump pulled the trigger is dishonest for sure.
Never on the nice side of town either. Like Charlie Kirk Boulevard is not gonna be a nice side of town. Anyways, I will be back on the 27th, you guys. Thank you guys for all the support throughout these couple of weeks, these last really kind of 6 weeks.
President Trump, and you know who people are now saying stood to gain? Well, Charlie's wife, Erica Kirk, who has now been put, Candace with that language, with this accusation, has put the wife of Charlie Kirk, and she'll say, that's not what I tried to do. It is. It's the result. Erica Kirk in the crosshairs. There's no middle ground here right now. Either Erica Kirk is evil and was in on it, or Candace Owens is an evil.
Interesting.
No matter how many times I watch that clip of me talking about Martin Luther King Boulevard and Charlie Kirk Boulevard, I do not get from that Erica Kirk killed her husband, but that's what they went with. Those were talking points that were delivered to them. They were supposed to go out of the gate with that. The question is why? Okay, retrospectively, that was a clue. They were panicking. They were trying to pretend, me saying that everyone betrayed him, which obviously was not about Erica. It also wasn't about Charlie's mother or Charlie's father or Charlie's children, but they were specifically trying to struggle session that into a slight against Erica, rather than more obviously suggesting that people at Turning Point USA betrayed him, which Erica Kirk was not an employee of leading up to his death. Why were they doing that? Then, of course, that made me only look further into the Egyptian planes, and I discovered that the planes had been tracking Charlie. We showed you guys this, right? We created this document, and we organized it, SUBND being the blue plane, and then tail number SUBTT being the yellow plane. That seems to have struck even more fear into the nest of mockingbirds. In fact, they sent Mother Mockingbird out, Ben Shapiro, to make the exact same wild allegation out of thin air, that I said something specifically about Erica when I had not. Again, I'll ask the question, why Erica? Why didn't Ben on stage say she accused Mikey or Rob McCoy? I've done multiple episodes now on Mikey McCoy, on Rob McCoy, speaking about Andrew Colvett, Alex Clark. Why did they keep going back to Erica? What is it about these Egyptian planes that were making them spiral? Now, I'm going to let you guys know right now that it is difficult to investigate a matter, especially when it involves a person that you know, because there are minor things that I immediately noticed that were off or unlikely that would not have necessarily alarmed the general public. For example, one of the earliest alarms that went off for me was the fact that Terrell Farnsworth, the guy who takes out the SD cards, was there at all. Okay, Terrell does not do college campus events. He doesn't do that. He's at the top of the company. He does the big events, the SAS, the AmFest. He does not do college events. But of course, he told me they were trying something new that day. And it must have been so new that it was over by the next event after Charlie died, because he wasn't there again. So he just out of the blue was at this event, and then he wasn't, and he secured the SD cards. Okay, it was something that I noticed that the rest of the world would not have taken as a concrete fact. It is also how I felt, and I'm sharing this with you now for a reason, when I learned that Charlie flew into Salt Lake City that morning. Because why didn't he fly into the much closer Provo airport? Now, ostensibly, the answer is because he had an interview with a person that nobody really knows. He's a managing director of a restaurant fund. Andrew K. Smith, out of nowhere, does this restaurantology interview with Charlie. And so Charlie flew into Salt Lake to make this interview happen. That, to me, felt like an oddity, okay? Because in a typical scenario, Charlie is not going to be incentivized to go out of his way because he would only do it actually if there was a big donor on the hook, and maybe that's what he was told, this guy's going to give a ton of money to Turning Point USA, or B, because it was a major political person. Otherwise, for the sake of a podcast, people travel to Charlie, okay? If you want to get Charlie on your show, you're going to travel to Charlie to make that happen. He's not going to go out of his way. To me, the common thing that always happened was they would set up an interview in an empty room at the campus. At UVU campus, they would have had this guy in the corner, and Charlie would have flown into Provo. So I felt, again, didn't share at this time, that they diverted Charlie Kirk to Salt Lake City for a reason. Okay?
And what reason
Nothing
is
else
that,
you should know
Candace?
about Charlie.
Let's hear
Because
it.
Charlie was obsessed with planes. My husband and him actually shared this in common, where every time we'd board a plane, Charlie would know exactly, like, way too many facts about the plane. If we boarded an old American Airlines flight, he'd be like, oh, they actually took these planes out of service in the 1970s. He just had a lot of Snapple facts when it came to planes, something that I just do not dedicate any of my time into learning about. He really liked planes and knowing everything about them. And more crucially, I want you guys to understand this, Charlie had a photographic memory. He did. Donor names, emails, numbers. Charlie Kirk was a walking Excel sheet. He'd walk into a room, he'd say, that's so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. He works for so-and-so, she works for so-and-so. They gave this much last year. That is why he was able to turn Turning Point USA into a successful machine, because of his memory. It was unbelievable. That's all going to be relevant now, okay? So you have to remember that Charlie landed into Salt Lake City at 9:23 a.m. local time. I suspect that if he had instead landed into Provo, he would have recognized the blue Egyptian plane, okay? It's not every day that you see an Egyptian military craft. It is now my well-informed opinion that he would have looked at that plane and he would have recognized the blue plane, and he would have instantly realized that something was amiss. And now I'm going to explain to you very carefully why I suspect that it is highly likely that Charlie would have recognized that plane, okay?
Okay. I'm with her. It's not hard evidence. You know, Charlie would have recognized this plane. I don't know. I'm sure he did have a photographic memory. I'm sure he did love planes and things like that. But does this imply that the restaurateur that he was meeting with was sort of a setup? And then if it's true that the restaurant, that usually people would go to Charlie for the podcast or whatever, then why didn't Charlie Kirk request that? Why did he go to to Salt Lake City instead of Provo? I don't know. Maybe we'll get some more information here, but that's interesting. I'm not sure.
Number SUBND, the blue plane. A pregnant mommy sleuth who was locked into this investigation discovered something that me and my team had missed. I consider her, obviously, and all of you to be my decentralized intelligence agents. Anyway, she sent me a rather urgent
And I'm honored, Candace, and I'll be accepting my medal at any moment.
email, and I'm obviously protecting her identity for reasons that are clear. But I want you to know that this discovery is due entirely to her. She is the person that, in this regard, went max for Charlie when I missed something. Her email stated, in effect, that I was only partially right about the plane tracking Charlie, that she had done an additional 15 hours of research and was able to discern that the person the planes were actually tracking for years was Erica. Not Charlie, but Erica was the one being tracked by these planes. And indeed, it turns out that she was correct. She discovered that between 2022 and September of 2025, both of those aircrafts, SUBTT, the yellow plane, and SUBND, the blue plane, showed 68 overlaps with Erica's documented locations, okay? 68 overlaps. I have since been able to add now 73 times that this overlapped, okay? And 29 of those instances also happened to include Charlie. Charlie was also present. And that's what I was stumbling upon when I was looking into this. I was like, why is this plane where Charlie is? The flights were majority clustered within 5 states, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Delaware, and Utah. And it's a pattern that she believes is statistically not random. I am telling you this information has been completely verified. I am showing you this on a spreadsheet now.
Okay, let's take a look. So, we have a spreadsheet. I'm sure we could get into this spreadsheet if we want. Maybe did the spreadsheet link it? Doesn't look like we're linking it. Okay, maybe we can find the spreadsheet if we have it. So, this is the plane in question, SUBTT. That looks like the vast majority. There's also this SUBND, which I guess are Israel, or no, not Israel, Egyptian military planes or something. I don't know. And these are all the times, presumably going even further to the 73 that she mentioned, that these planes overlap with Erica. So New York, Illinois, Chicago to Paris to Boston. Wow, it is ending up very often where Erica Kirk is at. And then this are how we know where she's at. And then you can find any plane by, they're all tracked in like databases. So, interesting. And Charlie is not present for most of these. Okay. This one's in Provo. A lot of times the plane is in Provo, which is where Charlie Kirk was shot, I'm guessing. Or it's the airport that he was supposed to fly into, according to Kansas. All right. I'm not sure what to make of this exactly, but that is interesting. This is definitely, that doesn't seem random. I don't think if you took any random private jet and tried to match it up with any random individual, that they would overlap this many times at the same airport. But hey.
These are all the instances in which this plane, all 68 instances, that this plane crossed with Erica. And I'm also going to say this includes overseas as well. Okay? So my instant question becomes, why didn't Turning Point acknowledge that this plane was familiar to them? When I was taking all of these figurative online bullets, someone could have easily said something, right? That's kind of a repeat thing in this investigation. Josh Hammer lies, I get attacked, Turning Point just stays silent. They know he's lying, but they allow the lie to flow. Alex Clark lies, I get attacked, I'm telling the truth. Turning Point knows it, but they kind of allow this like Catholic thing, lie to flow. And the influencers are allowed to lie. Nobody at Turning Point ever just steps to clarify that I'm onto something or I'm telling the truth about something. And when it comes to these Egyptian flights, the math on this is indisputable. There is less than a 0.0000000001% probability, okay, under random distribution models that these Egyptian planes coincidentally landed around Erica at these times. Like I said, this plane was not just with her in America, it was also tracking her overseas as well. I flagged this because I was alarmed because I thought it was tracking Charlie, and I am telling you that this plane, in addition to Charlie, and primarily actually was tracking Erica. Now, let's get to the day of the assassination. On the day of Charlie's assassination, we know the yellow plane took off in the morning, but the blue plane did not take off in the morning. The blue plane, SUBND, did, however, power on. And I want to be very clear as to what I mean when I say that this plane was on. I am saying that it was transponding, okay? It's transponding at the FBO at Duncan Aviation, a private terminal. So at the very least, they powered up the electronics. At most, they fully powered it on and the engine was running. What we know for certain is that it did not move from the FBO. Did not move. It was just on and transponding. And I want you to recognize, I'm going to make it clear for you what are the times that they were transponding. It's 2 times, and I'm going to tell you those times, but first I'm going to have Mark pull this up and he can tell us what it is that we're looking at here and how we were able to find this information about the jet that was just sitting at the FBO.
Yeah, so it looks like, based on this information that I found, and I had to figure out how to use this website because my mother didn't take enough Tylenol when she was pregnant with me, so I can't get too detailed on it.
That's really
But
funny.
essentially, all the flight radar websites only show when the plane is actually in the air. But if the plane is on the ground and transmitting, that data from the ADS-B transponder still goes out. So this website, ADS-B Exchange, takes that raw data. And so I was able to find it on September 10th. If you look on the very left of the frame, it shows September 10th. And it looks like there's just one data point. But what I did is I zoomed in, and the plane's actually not moving. It's just GPS is a little bit inaccurate when you're this close. But you're able to see all these different times here, and that is the UTC time zone, also known as Zulu time. So subtract 7 hours from that to get Utah time. And so I tracked all of these down, and I was able to find that the plane was transponding from 9:05 a.m. until 10:34 a.m. Then it was off, and then at 12:40 p.m. it came back on and turned off again at 1:29 p.m.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that so that everybody understands. We were able to discern from this data as follows. On September 10th, on the day of Charlie's assassination, this plane first transponded from 9:05 a.m. plus 36 seconds until it was turned off at 10:34 a.m. and 5 seconds. Then the plane turned back on, the transponder was turned back on just 17 minutes after Charlie was shot at 12:40 p.m. and 53 seconds, and it stayed on until 1:29 p.m. and 40 seconds. So what was the blue plane doing sitting on the tarmac? We can only imagine what it was doing, okay? We can run a couple of options here. It's possible that they were just running a maintenance check. Duncan Aviation does offer maintenance repairs. It's therefore possible that it just chose to run some maintenance checks at an unfortunate time, okay? Another possibility is that a military jet, particularly one from a foreign country, would likely be equipped with encrypted satellite-based communications capabilities. If you wanted to make an untraceable phone call, as an example, that would be a good place to do so because only the NSA would be able to intercept that call. And it's pretty obvious that the deep state doesn't seem particularly interested in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that'd be a safe place to communicate on that plane. Like I said, these are our options. What we can do now, however, is we can add this to our list of verifiable Turning Point USA lies because I'm going to count this as a lie by severe omission. By keeping your mouth shut and allowing Candace to take all the figurative bullets as she points out the oddity of a plane that you guys recognized, okay? My point is that these planes were known to Turning Point USA, and we all deserve to know why they were on the ground on that day, what they were doing on the ground on that day, and also why Turning Point chose to stay mum when every influencer under the sun and every publication attacked me for even mentioning the planes, making it seem like I was dumb, I was stupid. Turning Point USA is able to provide answers to these questions. There is more that I know, by the way, but I want to challenge them to respond to this first. Were these Egyptian military planes familiar to Charlie Kirk? It is a simple yes or no question. And answer it carefully, please, Andrew Colvett, spokesperson for Turning Point USA. Because there is something very specific, Andrew, that you told me that happened when you arrived into Provo on the tarmac that day, and it is now playing over and over and over again in my mind, and it isn't adding up. Another point that I'd like to follow up with, Andrew Colvett, let's stick with you, is that in the hospital on that day, you told me, you were in the hospital, that you were told that there was a credible threat against me and Tucker Carlson. Specifically, you told me that me and Tucker Carlson were on a list and that you were just telling me as a friend that me and Tucker should lay low. And after you told me that, I ended our phone call and I immediately called Tucker Carlson. And I said, hey, terrified, like obviously crying all day, and telling him that he and I have to lay low because there's a credible threat. And it is now really living inside me that you did not tell me who that threat was from. I assumed the feds told you, but I asked you the question, why wouldn't the feds call me directly if there was a threat against my life? No such call has come in. How is that possible? How could someone have told you that there was a credible threat and that me and Tucker Carlson should lay low, and yet me and Tucker have since not been notified by any federal agency about those credible threats? Who do those threats come from? Because I got to tell you, there are a lot of people making videos about me and Tucker Carlson, and none of them are Egyptians, okay? In fact, it's the Israelis. It is Israel that seems deeply upset with me and Tucker Carlson. They are not letting it go. They are making threats on every stage, okay? People that are tied to Israel are making threats against me and Tucker Carlson, demanding that we be canceled. So who specifically told you in the hospital room that there was a credible threat against my life? I'm going to need that information, okay? I want to know that now, because the stakes seem pretty high, and I have a lot of questions. This is probably a good time to tell you all that I am starting to piece together another scenario that could have happened, and there is another flight that I am now very interested in, and I believe that somebody somewhere knows something about this.
So let's just get the facts straight here. What we know from this Candace Owens sort of info drop. Essentially, there's these two very suspicious planes. They've been following around and intersecting with Erica Kirk primarily. They were in Ohio at the closest airport. Was it Utah? Was it Utah or Ohio? So much for facts. But whatever. You get the point. They're at the closest airport to the location that Charlie Kirk was shot at. One of these planes, which I guess is an Egyptian military plane, certainly Egyptian. I saw that on the flight tracking information. I'm not sure how they know it's a military plane, but I'm sure I'll just take that. I'll grant that. In the morning, the plane booted up and didn't leave, turned on its systems. Now, I guess you could turn on your systems to make contact, some kind of radio call, maybe be ready to leave or something like that. In the morning, before Charlie Kirk was shot. And then about 15 minutes after he was shot, it boots on again for an hour and stays put. This is interesting. I'm not sure what it means. I'm not sure what it leads to. I'd like to get more information about that. And I'd also like to know what nature of military plane. Is it an active military plane? Is it an inactive one? Is it a private jet that was bought from the Egyptian military or something like that? The only sort of exonerating information towards whatever the powers that be or Erica Kirk or any of these things would be if this plane was a Turning Point USA support vehicle. It carries all the crew or a bunch of camera equipment or press or something like that. That would be exonerating. Because, of course, if Charlie Kirk was shot, the plane would boot up to make contact or to be ready to go with whoever's coming or whatever. But also, that would be something that would be very easy for Turning Point to come back and say, Candace, you're crazy. This is a rabbit hole. This plane is one of ours. So, of course, it shows up wherever Erica Kirk is and wherever Charlie is. Now, if Turning Point doesn't do that, that's a little sketchy. But that's what we know so far. Now, what is this all equal to? It doesn't prove anything yet, but it is interesting. And I do appreciate Candace Owens' journalism, her research, and the mommy detective that found this out for her.
Flight, so pay attention to this. The tail number is N560TW. N560TW. It departed on the morning of September 10th from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
And it landed into Provo at 10:06 a.m. It then immediately turned around and departed for Santa Barbara.
Okay.
I'm assuming it maybe picked somebody up. And then it departed Santa Barbara at 11:37 a.m. for Scottsdale, landing at 12:44 p.m.
Okay.
There's a chance that you were working at the airport, that you saw somebody that morning. Maybe you were in Santa Barbara. Maybe you were in Scottsdale. Somebody saw something, and I'm asking you to email us more tips at CandaceOwens.com. I am interested in that flight. We're not done yet. There's more. I know something else about the Egyptian flights. This time, another mommy sleuth. I learned that oddly, Duncan Aviation, where that plane was transponding from, the FBO in Provo sourced rental cars for these quote unquote Egyptians when they landed a couple of days before this operation. And I didn't just learn that, I actually have the license plates number for 4 of the vehicles that they rented, okay? Honestly, you guys, it brings me great pleasure to deliver this information because now, surely, Tulsi's office can get involved because, you know, those darn Egyptians are at it again. Those darn Egyptians. Here are the 4 license plates of
Egyptians
cars
is code word for Israelis. I'm almost positive in this context, but okay.
that were rented. The first car rented was a silver 2025 Toyota RAV4.
Gotcha.
The Utah license plate number is T092ZS. Second car was a white 2025 Toyota Camry. Arizona license plate, CWN N872. Don't worry, I'm going to show you guys this in a spreadsheet. The third car was a white 2023 Toyota RAV4. Utah license plate number TN12KM. The fourth was a black 2025 Toyota 4Runner. Utah license plate number Z923DA. To the students at UVU, do we have this somewhere? Did you pull it up or just did you show them it on the screen? I didn't see what you showed them. Okay, cool. License plates were shown. Now to the students at UVU, please check your phones, your pictures from that day, because if any of those cars were seen at UVU or around campus on that day, then we're going to be able to suspect something else. Check if you hotels, maybe gas station, maybe you work somewhere. Look at those lights. Look for those plates during that time frame from when those cars were there until they departed.
Okay, interesting. Some sketchy cars
It's only
coming.
Monday, folks. All right, you guys. Too many people have also are down with Christ going inside of when you don't have time. It takes putting health 35% in terms of legislation that they're trying to get passed, right? To make this behind it. You know, I have no doubt that Tucker Carlson and I are being threatened. That's pretty obvious. It's very obvious that nobody thinks Egypt is behind it. You know, the last time that narrative ran was probably the USS Liberty. That was the plan, right? To make us think Egypt had attacked us. But it wasn't actually Egypt that attacked that ship. It was Israel. Israel attacked that ship. Israel is growing increasingly alarming in terms of legislation that they're trying to get passed, trying to censor our speech, trying to take over social media campaigns. Bibi Netanyahu's name-checking me and Tucker Carlson, and all of their sycophants are on stage calling us out. So I'm going to connect that dot there. And like I said, there is more I know about those planes. But your move, Turning Point USA, because that's the last time you're going to have me gaslit about something and sit by idly and pretend you know nothing. It's interesting, too, because in a typical scenario, when somebody's murdered in broad daylight and they have, like, you know, $100 million organization behind them, it's common sense that you should check the people that work at that organization. Like, that's like the first people that you should begin to investigate. So we reject your naval intelligence psychological operation where you tell us that that's a weird thing to do, okay? It's always somebody close to you. And if there's a financial motive, yeah. And I would say an organization of that size that misses their deadline, their tax deadline for the first time, that's a little weird. Yes, they did. A YouTube channel known as Wolves and Finance did a report on this, which I'm going to show. Now, this wasn't the people that I was working with, and there is somebody else that I told you that I'm going to have on my show that has been looking into this for a while. But this was extremely well done and at least brought forth some big questions that I think are on a lot of people's minds. How does an organization that size just miss the, not just they filed for an extension and then miss the extension deadline to file? Let's take a listen to a part of what they had to say.
Let's go look at the 990 forms that Turning Point USA submits to the IRS every year. These contain their annual financial statements. When you look at the forms, there are some very strange anomalies. Several of the 990 forms are missing. Turning Point USA lists 4 related entities. There's Turning Point USA, Turning Point Endowment, Turning Point Action, and America's Turning Point. All different organizations do slightly different things. The Form 990 for fiscal year 2024 is posted for Turning Point USA, but it is missing for all the other 3 organizations. It looks like it was never turned in. This is a massive red flag. So Tyler Boyer is being snarky on X.com and telling people to go look at the annual financial audit, but the financial audit is missing from last year for 3 of the 4 organizations. This strange decision to hide their financial statements happened 4 months before Charlie Kirk was murdered. I will repeat for clarity. Someone at Turning Point decided not to file 3 of the 4 of their annual financial statements 4 months before Charlie Kirk appointed a new COO, requested a new audit, and was murdered. Those 3 financial statements are still missing.
Interesting.
So to be clear, that was another point that they gaslit me on when I told you that it was unusual that 7 days before Charlie died, he said that he wanted to establish Doge, right? Tyler came out and lied, and he said, this is just totally regular. And Alex Clark said, oh, every year since I've been here, this is what we do. And the guy starts this video by being like, you have to be an idiot to accept that as an answer. Of course, doing an audit has nothing to do with internally establishing a Doge, right? He recognized that something was wrong at the organization. And as I told you, okay, because I do not miss on these things, he was not just concerned about where the money was going, he was concerned about where it was coming from. And what I can tell you about Charlie is that if Charlie got clued into something, if Charlie was at first trusting his lieutenant and then he suddenly said, wait a second, what's going on over here? And he decided that he wanted to figure something out, he would have figured that ish out by sundown, okay? That is how brilliant he was. If it had his attention, he would have figured it out by sundown. What did Charlie discover is my question, okay? Now, to correct something that he says there, he says 4 months before, that's the regular tax deadline. It is actually normal. It is for big companies to file for a tax extension, but they missed that deadline as well. I think that was October 15th was a tax extension deadline. They have missed them both, and that is completely abnormal. And he is correct. If you go back and you look at Turning Point USA's filings before, they always file all of them at the same time. So this is unusual that they've left off 3 of them. And I'm going to let him get into a deeper clip here where he discusses the quote-unquote missing $8.6 million. Take a listen.
Let us look at the one financial statement we do have for fiscal year 2024 for Turning Point USA. Schedule I shows grants and other assistance to organizations, governments, and individuals in the United States. This schedule shows you where Turning Point is sending its money. We see that a lot of money, $8,560,625, is being sent to America's Turning Point. They are sending it to their own shell company. Now, this is not necessarily illegal, except for the fact that the financial statement for the other organization is missing. We cannot see how this $8.6 million is being spent.
Yeah, that's
This
interesting.
is very important because there are strange variances around this money. I have pulled the last 5 years of 990 forms for Turning Point USA. Here is a table with contributions compared with the largest expense, which are the grants from Schedule I. You can immediately see a strange dip between.
Hey, what's up, Miss Smokey Saint? How you doing today? How you doing? I'm glad you agree. God bless you as well. Yeah, abortion, horrible. Children can't consent. I actually can't get anyone to even come in and really argue these points because I think they're such common sense. So I appreciate you. That's why we kind of moved on to, did Turning Point USA assassinate Charlie Kirk? I don't have an opinion yet. I'm interested in the facts that Candace Owens is presenting. There's definitely some sketchy financial stuff going on with Turning Point just months prior to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The most interesting being this recent thing where Turning Point USA sends $8.5 million to one of their sort of subsidiary companies, which would not be illegal except for the fact that that subsidiary company has not reported its financials. It missed both of its tax deadlines. They missed the first one, filed an extension, missed that one as well. So what does that mean? I mean, that's really not typical for a giant, multi-million-dollar corporation to be so flippant with their taxes. Where did that money go? Now, I think what Candace is leading towards, and which I don't know if I agree with or not, is that money went to shady operators. Shady operators that might have an interest in taking out Charlie Kirk if he was catching on to this sort of financial discrepancy. And you think she has presented some very compelling points, especially regarding the stuff with Israel. I mean, I tend to agree with you. I don't particularly trust Israel at all as as an entity. The interesting thing, and you probably saw this, were these flights. There's these Egyptian, quote, I think Egyptian is just code word for Israeli, to be honest. There are these Egyptian planes that have been following Erica Kirk around. And we thought they were following Charlie Kirk around because this one plane, these two planes, intercepted with him on 29 different occasions over the past year or a couple of years. But actually, according to one of the mommy sleuths that Candace Owens has in her fan base, they've kind of been intercepting Charlie Kirk coincidentally, because 73 times they've actually intercepted Erica Kirk. Now, there's only a couple possibilities here. Either this is a foreign entity kind of like following and tracking the Kirks, specifically Erica Kirk. It could be some kind of Turning Point internal, a friend of Turning Point or something. Like I was saying, like the most sort of, what would it be? The most, gracious point of view towards Turning Point, given that they haven't said anything about these planes, is that it's some kind of Turning Point, support vehicle, it carries the press or the equipment or extra staff or something like that. Although that would be easy for Turning Point to just tell us and show us and shut Candace up forever. And I guess the third option would be random chance, but that's actually impossible, as we found out. The chance of any random plane intercepting any random person so frequently is like 0.00000000001%. So there's something about this plane which is connected to Erica Kirk specifically. It's an Egyptian plane, which Israel has used Egypt before as a proxy to say, oh, the Egyptians are attacking. Candace gave the example of the USS Liberty, when actually it was Israel which had sunk or attacked the USS Liberty. There's something going on here. We're not sure. That the plane thing was somewhat, it's interesting. It doesn't lead me to any sort of final conclusion, but the Turning Point financials is what's really interesting, because when you have a $100 million corporation, there's a lot of people right below Charlie Kirk in the sort of like chain of command that would stand to gain a lot of money by taking out the moral leader, the moral head of the organization. Then they can just become like any other NGO or corrupt charity where they can embezzle as much money as they want. Well, once Charlie's out of the way, then we can embezzle everything we want and keep doing the shady tax stuff. Candace's theory, and we can't prove this, is that Charlie Kirk caught on to what was going on within his own company, and perhaps it was the people within Turning Point that needed to get rid of him to continue this kind of embezzlement. And you say, to be honest, Turning Point is more likely engaged in some type of embezzlement than some deep financial conspiracy. Yeah, that's what I mean. I think there's some kind of embezzlement going on, that perhaps Mr. Kirk was becoming keen towards. That makes more sense to me than Israel straight out assassinating him just because he might change his mind about them when he hadn't really been explicit about that yet. Not to mention, if he went ahead and denounced Israel, they would have been destroyed financially. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, it might not be that like, oh, Israel wants to get rid of him because he might say something against them. It's more like others at Turning Point might want to get rid of Charlie because he might ruin their donation base, their donor base, by denouncing Israel or changing his views on foreign policy towards Israel. That's an interesting theory. I think that's somewhat solid. I don't know how Erica plays into this. I mean, do you believe that she's involved somehow? Do you believe that she has any interest in taking out Charlie? It doesn't seem like she would. I'm going to need more evidence to convince me of that personally. But I think we can see that something shady is happening. Something shady is happening, especially on the financial side.
Between 2022 and 2023. This dip happens because in prior years, they were sending money to Turning Point Endowment. They were transferring millions of dollars. This stopped in 2021, and they started ramping up sending money to America's Turning Point. Let's break this down. First of all, I find it really unethical that they were sending millions of dollars to their own endowment. I know that a lot of nonprofits do this, but I think it is unethical. Do the donors know this is how Turning Point is spending their money? Turning Point USA is taking in donations and then sending the money to their endowment to invest in the stock market. In my opinion, they should be spending donations on operating their nonprofit, not on buying investments. As of fiscal year 2023, they had $61 million of assets in the endowment, which was generating $1.9 million a year of investment income. Personally, I think that's an unethical way to run a nonprofit, but that's just my opinion. But what is important here is what happened to the missing $8.6 million, the amount sent to America's Turning Point in fiscal year 2024. The amount of money sent to America's Turning Point was getting larger and larger, and because the financial statements are missing, we cannot tell how this money was spent. If we look at the prior year, the majority of the money was spent on other salaries and wages. How is this possible when America's Turning Point reports 0 employees?
Well, Candace's look says it all. I have the same look. We spent $4 million on other employees, of which we have 0. That doesn't raise an eyebrow. Well, if it doesn't raise an eyebrow, then you might not have eyes to see, and therefore no eyebrows to raise. That is sketchy. Sketchy alarm going off. Yeah, this is making sense. This is making sense more than any other theory that I've heard since. Even any other of Candace's theories. I'm becoming black-pilled towards Turning Point. I feel like they are probably behind the assassination for financial reasons to continue some sort of embezzlement scheme. Other employees got $4 million. Also, I mean, how corrupt or the IRS isn't interested in that at all? That a company is spending $4 million on employee salaries, of which there are no employees. That's sketchy. That's sketchy. Usually the IRS loves to, snag people, grab them. That's just like an easy payday for some, IRS upper manager. But anyway.
Does anyone else think that sounds a little suspicious? In my opinion, what I think is happening is I think there are fake people on the payroll. I think that paychecks are getting sent to people who do not really exist. And that would explain why we have a company with 0 employees with millions of dollars of salary expense.
Yeah, that sounds highly suspicious to me, especially when you add in the fact that Charlie wanted to establish a Doge 7 days before he died, and once you also add into the fact that they're all telling strange lies, when you also add in the fact that there is this weird psychological campaign to tell us not to look at Turning Point USA, or we're going to go to hell, essentially. They're like using biblical passage to tell us why it's not moral. Do they think we are this soft and persuadable?
Yeah.
Like, do we look like the kinds of people that are just going to watch an assassination in broad daylight and just let it go because some influencers insist that we do? No, sorry. It's not 1963. You're not going to get away with it this time. Anyways, he then goes on to describe how they conducted their own audit using a firm called Baker Tilly. I'll let him take it away.
What about Tyler Boyer's argument that they have an annual financial audit every year? If what I am saying is true, why wouldn't their annual audit catch these issues? The annual financial audit for Turning Point USA, Inc. and its affiliates was performed by an accounting firm called Baker Tilly. In the notes, they explain that they audited Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Turning Point Endowment, America's Turning Point, and TP USA Merch. That usually means they audited all the shell companies when they provided their opinion that the statements present fairly in all material respects. That means it is a clean audit with no problems. I wonder if Baker Tilly will provide an explanation why they can issue a flawless audit report when 3 990 forms were never filed with the IRS. And just to clarify, Baker Tilly's audit opinion letter is signed after Turning Point missed the filing date with the IRS. So there is no excuse for Baker Tilly not to mention this in their audit opinion. Erica Kirk assumed the role of CEO of Turning Point USA on September 18th, 2025, 8 days after Charlie Kirk was murdered. She has been the CEO for almost 2 months. She needs to answer these questions. If someone has lied on the 990 form, people go to jail for that. I want some explanation of why Turning Point USA sent $8.6 million to their shell company and then did not file financial statements. And Erica, I don't know who does the accounting at Turning Point, but if they have not been telling you about any of this, you need to fire your accountants immediately.
I think all valid points. And again, just to modify, it is possible that when they used that outside auditor, that they showed them all of the documentation and then they gave them a clean bill of health. And then for whatever reason, Turning Point decided not to file. It's possible. Okay. Like I said, probably a low probability, but it is plausible that they did that. But it is just a fact that they missed the filing extension deadline. So what's going on here? Where did the 8.5 million go? And what's also compelling about this video, which we didn't show, is that he clarifies that Turning Point USA actually decreased their staff, the 501c3 arm, 33%, by 33%. So there was a 33% staff reduction. And yet the cost of salaries somehow went up. And to him, that looks suspicious. And I agree, that looks suspicious, right? And this, of course, is the kind of pressure that needs to be put on them. Yes, I said it was a very bad idea right off the bat for Erica, who's grieving her husband, to then instantly become a chairman and the CEO, because these are valid questions now that people are asking. And a chairman and a CEO is going to have to respond to those questions. You have to answer these questions when people are asking about money, especially given the fact that so many people, I mean, they cleared over $70 million in the first couple of weeks after Charlie was assassinated. Okay, that's a lot of well-meaning people that are giving money to this organization who are now learning how this organization functions by routing the bulk of their money, or to a lot of their money rather, not the bulk of it, into their endowment fund, right? That is not okay. We deserve answers to the questions that we are asking, and we're going to keep asking them, okay? We are going to keep asking them because I know there are snakes at Turning Point USA, and I'm going to reveal more to you guys
Clearly.
tomorrow. First, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back with some comments and answers to your questions. Financing holiday sandwich.com, and some really great content daily on Charlie. Okay, I will say I did not vet that information. Obviously, we, no matter what, pull the top comment from a previous episode. All
right, we're not too interested in the comments. That's interesting. A lot of interesting information. Makes a few things make sense. Like, who would be interested in assassinating Charlie Kirk? Well, perhaps the people that financially benefit from his assassination. I'm not saying it's Erica per se. I think Candace has a good point that it was probably irresponsible. It's a little strange to take on the role of CEO of Turning Point 8 days after the murder of your husband. Not because, like, the things that the libtards are going to say, well, she's not grieving at all. She's not. I think she is grieving. And I think there are probably huge problems at Turning Point. And perhaps it's even people at Turning Point that had the interest in assassinating Charlie Kirk. So the CEO is going to have to answer for that. Now, is a grieving widow the right person to answer for the major problems and questions of corruption? Probably not. Is she going to be in the right mindset to evaluate all these things objectively? I don't think so. I think she's going to have a vested interest emotionally and for the sake of her family not to stir up problems and conspiracies. But as we know, a lot of times conspiracies are either true or grounded in some kind of truth. So I'll be interested to see how Turning Point responds to this. I kind of think they're just not going to. I think they're just going to kind of ignore it and continue. And I think the other sort of conservative talking heads are going to continue to deride Candace Owens for asking these questions. But they really don't have the right to do that. I think I didn't see anything in that presentation by Candace to say that she's being dishonest, really. She's just kind of presenting facts, and they have troubling implications, these facts. The plane, the finances, all things to be considered. I'm pretty much in the camp right now, I think, and I'm just going to say it, and I can be wrong, and I'll be happily proven wrong, I hope so, that Turning Point USA has snakes, as Candace said, and that those snakes have a financial interest in assassinating Charlie Kirk. Therefore, the assassination of Charlie Kirk is most likely attributed to embezzlers and financial fraudsters within Turning Point that wanted to get someone out of the way who posed a obstacle to their continuing embezzlement. That makes sense to me. That's the only thing so far that does make sense. What doesn't make sense to me is, random trans guy, activist, coordinating such a, impactful assassination with kind of no motive. The only motive we've been told of the hypothetical random shooter outcome is that, his boyfriend is trans and Charlie Kirk hates trans people, so therefore he's going to do an assassination. I mean, that's a weak motive. That's a weak motive to throw your entire life away on. And we already know the CIA, the intelligence playbook in terms of assassinations. You find a crazy guy to be a patsy, and then everyone forgets about it. Well, as Candace said, it's not 1963 anymore. We have the internet. We have freedom of speech. We have fearless journalists and reporters who will actually investigate these things. And I'll try to keep you guys updated to the best of my ability. Of course, I'm not a serious journalist, so that's going to be limited to what I can find and hear from others. But there were plenty of receipts in that video for us to be sufficiently skeptical of Turning Point, I think. That's what I'm going to say. So, that concludes the Candace Owens portion of the stream. Let's see, maybe we can hop into a quick TikTok debate or something like that. That would be cool. Now, I'm not sure if I got approved. I'm not sure if I got approved to stream on TikTok, but it looks like I did. So, yeah, I did. Okay, that's cool. So we'll do that next time. I'll set up my own debate channel on TikTok and we can debate whatever. Probably abortion. That's a good one. Let's hop into someone else's stream and see what they're talking about. See if we can hop in without too much chaos. This guy has the affirmative. Okay, this could be a good one here. Abortion debates. Pro-life.
You get to choose, so do I. I mean, are you really pro-choice?
100%. I benefited from abortions. I think that dudes that don't think otherwise.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I definitely benefited.
I mean,
that's not the point of abortion. Is not
He
to
mean you benefited from abortions. How many women have you gotten fucking pregnant, bro?
It doesn't matter. What I'm saying is,
I agree.
benefited
No,
in the
I'm curious.
sense that
How many
I didn't
women
want
have
to
you
have a
gotten
kid and
pregnant?
they followed through.
I don't care.
How many women have you gotten pregnant? I gotta know. Like,
He probably
could
doesn't
you
even
say
know.
that like there's a list of them? I know. Like,
He probably
could
doesn't
you
even
say
know.
that like there's a list?
Okay.
He doesn't know. He probably has some random kids running around out there.
So I am pro-choice. What I'm saying is men that don't support a woman's right to choose, there's a lot of dudes that are counting on it.
How many women do you pay child support to? How many
Zero.
women do you pay child support to?
0.
Huh?
Do you have like a friend
Okay.
that's going through some type
Because,
of?
Yeah, my brother is in a situation where he had a kid that he was obligated to pay child support with. He dated her for, what, a month? And, yeah, he's sucked in it. They don't live next to each other, right? But he's the deadbeat. Come on.
Well,
I mean,
like y'all men realize that, right? Like you don't have to stick your cock in every bitch you come across.
They don't have
What
sex, is
the-
what you're saying.
no.
yes.
No, just
Yeah.
not with every woman. Like,
That's
be
the case,
careful
then
who
you're
you
very
stick your penis
pro-life.
in and who you come in, right? Like, be careful who you bust a nut in.
Isn't that the same stance as pro-life? Just close your legs.
Yeah, it is.
No, but,
That's the same-
but
that's-
no, it's the fact that you
that's the
sat there and
same.
you said something about the fact that you said something about you've benefited from abortion and some of the weird shit that you said around that and wanting to
What's
abort your
weird about it?
financial and all this other
Well,
woman
Look,
your
I don't really
responsibility.
care if you. That's fine by me.
Cool.
I guess.
But I don't understand. I want to know Chris's perspective better. What's so weird about having benefited from abortions?
As if
Nothing.
women don't.
It's just weird that you would come on a live and say that.
Why?
This is such a low IQ lobby. Should I jump in this or should I save it for next time? You know what? I think we're going to save this for next time. If I get into one of these, it's going to be hours of me talking. So I think we covered what we wanted to cover today. Next time, we will start our journey into TikTok debates, the devil's armpit of TikTok debates. Thank you, everybody, for watching and tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Stay curious. Stay woke. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. And we'll see you not tomorrow, on Wednesday. Wednesday, we'll see you for some fun debates and